Hi BookTube. The muse who inspired today's Sideline video was Gareth at the channel Books, Songs and Other Magic. I'm going to leave a link in my description box because if you're not already subscribed, you should be. Gareth recently reached his 1,000 subscriber benchmark. Congratulations, by the way. And I get why. Because he has great ideas. And I know some people have commented about how they don't like his presentation style, but I like it. And I like it because there's nothing flash. You're getting Gareth. You just know you're getting Gareth, right? Exactly what he puts on screen. And a couple of days ago, he shared his thoughts about why ebooks don't feel like the reading experience for him, and talked about exactly why they don't provide what paper books provide. And he was concerned it might be a risky video. And I don't know what he's thinking there, unless maybe there's a risk that there are some viewers out there who regard anybody's statement of opinion as an automatic challenge to their own. I don't know. The booktubers that I have encountered so far, they seem way more sophisticated than that. I found Gareth's video really fascinating because I was listening and I was agreeing with some points really strongly. I was going, yeah, yeah, I'm right with you there. And then he'd make another point and suddenly I'd go, you know how you make all those sort of crooked, puckered faces when you're trying really hard to think of an experience that you've had that matches, and you just can't find it. You just can't find it. So that made me think, okay, wait a second. Why are there some differences here between, why do I agree with some things and not with others? And did I have the same kind of sensible explanations for why I felt that Gareth was giving in his video? One of the first things he mentioned was how much electronic material he's got to handle as part of his day job. And I could definitely relate to that. I work in credit control. And I manage a small team, and our job is to contact customers when they have overdue debt. If anything has gone wrong with a particular sale or with a bill or with the customer's business, my team become responsible for discovering exactly what those problems are. And then we have to own the problem and solve it for however long it takes. And there's a lot of back and forth emails, a lot of video calls, a lot of data that needs to be extracted and then analyzed, reports to be prepared, yada, yada, yada. You get the idea. I should be more like Gareth. Yeah, I should ditch the screens when I get home, and I should only have non-electronic hobbies. But I don't. The terrible, terrible truth is that the things I love doing most really need my laptop and a Wi-Fi connection. For that reason, I do try to keep my ebook reading sensible. I would never dream of reading just ebooks for that reason. I usually have between 2 or 3 books that I'm reading at any one time, and I try not to have more than one of those as an ebook, if I have one at all. The most interesting thing that Gareth put forward on his video was he made this point that he has a relationship with each one of his physical books, and that it was a relationship with that thing, with the book as a physical object. It's a very important point, and I think that it's true that to one degree or another for all book owners, there's some kind of relationship with the physicality of a book. But I say to one degree or another because that was the point where I knew I felt differently. I do have a relationship to my books as objects, but it's not quite the same as the one Gareth described. And I also have a relationship to my books which has nothing to do with the book as object at all. Nothing to do with the ebook text file, nothing to do with the digital device that carries the file. So that's going to need a little explanation. Even though I now read ebooks, I'd say about a 1/3, 2/3 split between ebooks, paper books. If somebody came up to me today and said, Heather, I have to warn you, in 5 days' time, all paper books will vanish, right? All over the world, every single one. If I knew that one day I was going to wake up and find my bookshelves empty, if I knew that one day I was going to wake up and never again be able to visit a bookshop or a library because all of them would be empty, I don't even have an expression for it, the horror. I would spend those 5 days in mourning. And then after the books had vanished, I would spend years grieving for them. I would probably never get over that kind of loss. But my bookshelves, as they are right now, they probably consist of 30 to 50% of books I've never even read yet. And that's partly because I share the bookcases, right, with the person who watches television, because he also reads books, yeah? But I would miss his books. That's the crazy thing. I would miss them just as much as I miss mine if they all disappeared. I would miss the fact that I used to own books that I no longer remember buying, or that I would even be surprised to find out that I actually owned. So I think the relationship I have with the physicality of books is about something a little different than what Gareth described, because he described a relationship with each individual book. I think, for me, owning physical books provides some kind of psychological buffer. My greatest fear is not having enough to read, right? I simply cannot run out of reading material under any circumstances. And the chances of this happening are very low as far as I'm aware. But given the general precariousness of life, the horror of life right now, I'm not even going to refer to what's in the news because I'm not. One of the crazy ways that I comfort myself is by filling 2 of the 4 walls in my living room with bookcases that are just crammed and crowded and overstuffed with paper books. And I should also confess that I seem to have this same cramming habit on my Kindle and my 5 Amazon wish lists. And a few years ago, when there was a threat that our little library here was going to close, that the council were going to close it down, I was so unhappy, because from my point of view, all the books in our library were providing me with more of this buffer, right? And I didn't even want to lose that layer of buffer, right? Even the children's picture books and the books written in another language, I didn't want to lose any of them, just in case, I wanted to learn one of those languages. So, what am I trying to say? With maybe a few exceptions, I do not have relationships with individual physical books in the same way Gareth was describing. I relate to the physicality of books in quantity, right? I need to have physical books in my life. Yeah, a lot of physical books in my life. But I don't need to have specific books, if that makes sense. The relationship that I have with specific books most of the time is virtual rather than physical. Okay, what do I mean by that? I think my relationship is a form of telepathy between the author and myself, between the time a book was written and now, between the time I last read that particular book and the time I'm now rereading it. Reading, it's about reading as that collection of brain activities, that work together. It's about the recognition and the decoding of these markings on paper, right? And then understanding that they also work their way to become greater structures of sentences and paragraphs, and points being made and points being proven, the analysis of that, the visualization of story events, the appreciation of just language as art in itself, with rhythms and sound textures and subtler things like metaphors and allusions, rhetorical devices. And there's just the retention and memory that you have to have during the reading process itself so that you can comprehend complex narratives and learn, do some kind of deep learning. So that after you finish the book, the ideas and the characters, they stay with you, they live on. So perhaps there are other readers out there who can identify with what I'm saying, that you have a relationship with individual books, but the stress is more on the virtual, the mental experience of reading books. I've not included emotional experiences, of course, bloody hell, they're also really important, like the catharsis that helps you, that you get when you go past the climax of a book, or the chance that a book gives you just to escape reality. It just vanishes during the time you have the pages open. Or that uncanny feeling that you've known a character so well that they feel like you knew a real person. All those experiences. But I did say, there were some exceptions. Sometimes a book is more than just its text and the mental experience of reading it, isn't it? Gareth held up one book that I immediately thought, I see exactly what he means. The book with the New York Times cartoons. That has some text, but the point of that book is visual art, isn't it? And that's a whole different animal. I've never found, for example, online maps as satisfying to study as paging through a physical atlas. Gareth's video, it also mentioned in passing that ebooks were better for the environment. And I didn't know what to make of that comment. Are they better? I've seen that on the internet myself, but I've not. I'd love it if someone could recommend a link to a website or a podcast that gets down to the calculations on that. Yeah, if you know something, please go ahead and make a comment. Ebooks, I know they have to exist in two different places. They have to exist in the cloud, which means they exist in one of these vast server locations which are helping to heat up the atmosphere. And then, of course, they have to exist on our digital devices, which require the excavation of rare minerals, and they also contain plastic, so they're not easy to recycle. And then, of course, there's all the outer packaging, and on top of that, the devices must have a supply of electricity to charge their batteries. So, does all that still make the ebook a better environmental option than paper books? I just want to know. I'm not saying I know. I'm saying I'd like to see it spelled out. I'd like to see the fine print on that contract, if you get me. Ebooks and paper books also, though, they have different political and social impacts, don't they? Politically, it's surely easier to repress ebook reading than paper book reading, yeah? Because you can't burn an ebook, it's true, but you can shut down the servers that hold them, or you can control the server output and content. Paper books, once they've been in circulation, it's very difficult to be sure that you have hunted down and confiscated every one. There's always the chance that some rogue paper books will survive any purge. Socially, ebooks can be offered as part of a library's services, yes, but they don't require the library, right? So suddenly you lose that hub. And imagining a world that wouldn't have libraries and bookshops, please tell me, BookTube, is that not horrifying? No matter how you get your books, is it not horrifying to imagine all libraries and all bookshops vanishing and never coming back? It is for me. It is for me. You know, I may love my Kindle, but I'm not happy about that scenario. And I remember Gareth talking about meeting other booktubers in London, and they went around the bookshops. That was a fantastic video. There'd be none of that in an all ebook world. You know, no Hey on Why. Oh, God, no book festivals. What would be the point? I suppose you could still come and listen to authors talk, but I mean, you might as well just catch them virtually, mightn't you? If a physical book doesn't matter, does it matter that you meet the physical author? And I mean, I'm not even going to go into AI written books because I've seen better videos than I could make, and I'm just going to leave that subject alone for now. Ebooks can't be easily shared with others. I mean, I know Amazon allows some limited sharing, but it's a short leash compared to, the freedom that you've got if you own a paper book. You can't leave your ebooks in one of those book exchange boxes, or you can't take them to a book swap cafe. Ebooks can, I guess you can aimlessly page through an ebook, randomly open it to a spot and start reading. But I've never heard of anybody actually interacting with an ebook that way. If you're invited to someone's house, you can always look at their bookshelves, and that's not an invasion of privacy. But it would be if you picked up their digital device and started to browse their ebook library, without their permission. So it's a whole different thing. Socially, it changes how we do books socially if we were talking all ebooks instead and no paper books. Do we really own our ebooks? I don't feel like I own them. I've never heard of anyone leaving their Kindle or their Amazon Prime account in their will. I'm sure Amazon wouldn't be happy with that sort of thing if they could prove that it was happening. Now, let's say I live in the UK now, but if I moved back to Canada, where my family are based, and I had to replace my Kindle for some reason, I mean, could I still access the ebook library that I collected from Amazon UK? Or would I have to start over? Question, everyone. Anybody who knows, please feel free to leave a comment. An ebook can go places without electricity, yes, for a certain amount of time. But paper books can go longer without any source of power. And that can be important where there simply aren't sources of power, or there are irregular sources of power. And of course, I forgot to mention the economic impact. And Gareth did. He did. Ebooks and virtual publishing, they now allow new authors to bypass all the publishing gatekeepers and find an audience for their work, which sounds wonderful. They don't usually get paid much, and I think only a very lucky few get a deal from a conventional publisher. And even then, I don't think all of them get a deal which would allow them to make a living from writing. Now, I mean, if we're honest, making a living from creative work has always been hit and miss. A few make it, but a lot don't. And yeah, so even in the best of times, it's only a minority of artists that actually get to be what they are professionally. Most of us have to do it as a hobby. It would be interesting to speculate what art would be like if nobody could make a full-time living from it and had to produce it all in their spare time. I like imagining worst case scenario. So here's a worst case scenario. Everybody has to do it for nothing, right? What happens? And I thought, well, you would either get a lot more very young or very old artists, that is, people who might have a bit more time. People sort of in the middle of their life probably would have work and family responsibilities, and that might crowd out their opportunities for creativity, take up all their time, all their energy. Art forms that require collaboration, multi-skilled effort, which is anything musical, anything related to visual media, film, television, that would really suffer because, how in the hell do you coordinate people that have to do other jobs? It's a nightmare. You could do it in small groups, but it would be difficult to get much bigger. So those art forms would suffer more than, say, an individual writing a novel or a poet or a painter who could, if it's solitary, it'd be easier to do. And of course, I think in time, the old gatekeepers, publishers and record industry and so on, they'd just be replaced by new gatekeepers, wouldn't they? I think the providers of digital platforms, well, they've never really been too concerned about providing good art. I think, what they really want is a way that they can demand more money for the product that they do offer. So I could see them over time maybe decreasing their capacity for letting people publish and increasing the charges. So they create almost that publisher sense of cachet and superiority, that kind of trying to recapture that spirit of, but we've published this and it's quite exclusive. And so somehow in your mind, maybe better, whether it is or not. And this would push out creators whose income was lower to start with. So on balance, what am I saying? I could never do without paper books. Never, ever, ever, ever. But that's not because I have a relationship with the individual physical books I own, not the individual ones. I need paper books, but the relationship I have with individual books, the same one that I have with paper books is the same one that I have with my Kindle books. It's a relationship based on what the process of reading has done for me, right? The memories, the ideas, the insights that I just wouldn't have without books. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. Look out next time for a Middlemarch meditation. Got that recorded tonight as well. So I'm feeling very productive tonight in terms of recording, although my throat is getting very dry. Those of you that do this a lot, how do you keep from getting a tickly throat? Another comment in the comments box if you know. Thanks very much, everybody. Talk to you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.